guys. Welcome back. We have Leisse here today.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
So excited to have you. So we start all of our shows on Socially Unapologetic with two truths and one lie. I like to put people on the spot, mind flowing, let our listeners kind
Okay.
of get to know you a bit in a fun way. So two truths, one lie. I'm going to get you to tell us them and then not tell us what the answer is, because at the end of the episode, I'm going to guess what I think it is, and then we'll give the answer to our audience so they have some time to kind of get to know you and guess.
Okay. So two truths and a lie. All right. Number one, I have met Brene Brown twice. I have driven the California coast all the way up in a convertible. I have had lunch with Steve Carell.
Okay, I like those. Those are good ones. I'm excited to get to talk to you today. Do you want to tell us a bit about who you are and what you kind of do for our listeners that do not know you?
Sure. I'm a leadership development expert. I like to say that I am the best at helping you be the best at what you do. I've been called a lot of things, but the two things that I like the best are I'm known as the secret weapon of the C-suite and the Marie Kondo of your unconscious, because I always help tidy things up in there and really get you to hang on to what sparks joy and get rid of the rest. I'm an award-winning speaker. I'm a best-selling author. I'm a taco enthusiast, cancer survivor, and mom of 3.
Oh, okay. I love that. I love the taco enthusiast. I'm also a big foodie, so I love that. Gonna throw us right into the whole conversation. My podcast focuses a lot on like business and leadership and entrepreneurs. And I want to know what balance in business kind of means to you, or how you kind of portray that to your clients.
Always a great question. I feel like it changes. I think the reality is that it changes. I don't think that there is one such thing as work-life balance. To me, it feels like a flow. I've heard the word harmony before. Joanna Griffiths from Nix says work-life rhythm, which I really like. For me personally, it is about, I think this is true for so many of us, it's about time freedom and flexibility. It's about like, how do I get to do what I love and do what I excel at doing, while also making time for the stuff I don't get paid to do. My family is really, really important to me. Taking care of my emotional and mental health is really, really important to me. So being able to make time for all of those different buckets is what true balance feels like, because that feels like true freedom.
That's so true. I totally get what you mean of like the being paid for your time. I always felt like when I first started my business, I was literally just working 14, 15 hours a day. And then I take a look back, I'm like, I was not being paid for any of that time.
I just made minimum wage. Like, what was the point of doing all of it?
Yeah. But I also think a lot of that too kind of brought me to where I am today, because I really learned that, like, I went through that. I didn't have that work-life balance. And then now I'm like, oh my God, I really value that. And I like lost that time by not prioritizing it. So it kind of like opened up my mind to life
That makes
balance
sense.
was. So think some leadership challenges you see in business owners or women in business are, because I know you focus a lot with women entrepreneurs and kind of helping them. So what do you think the biggest challenge you see?
I would say it's twofold, because emotional intelligence is really my playground. And so under that umbrella, I feel like there are two challenges. One, almost everybody I work with is like firstborn, accidental overachiever, just carries everything on her back, is doing it all at the same time, makes it look easy, and is secretly exhausted from trying to maintain this illusion of perfection. So that first challenge is not being able to know what enough feels like. We get stuck on this hamster wheel of, like do, achieve, repeat, do, achieve, repeat, do, achieve, repeat. When it doesn't feel like we have enough, we just go through the formula and we do it all over again. And then I find that we are looking at this checklist. We're like, man, on paper, I did everything right. So how come this doesn't feel like it's supposed to, right?
Yeah.
So that ability, or I guess inability, to really define what is enough for me specifically, and how do I stop there, like rather than get caught up in this moving target of success. And the second one, very honestly, is probably some degree of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome wears a lot of hats. We talk about it on Instagram very flippantly, but it's a real thing. And when you think that women applying for the same job as men, if she doesn't meet like at least 9 out of 10 criteria, she's not applying for the job. She's like, nope, I don't qualify. Whereas dudes tend to be like, ah, I've got one thing on that list. I'm going to go for broke. And so there's this real, this is generations of programming, but it's this real inflated expectation of how far we should be and how much we should do, that we start to devalue our own selves in addition to how the world sees us.
And you talk about like emotional intelligence a lot, and you brought that up in the first one. So for those people that don't really like understand the meaning behind emotional intelligence, like how can you kind of explain how you help leaders and businesses kind of like
Mhm.
get out on their own and succeed with that emotional intelligence?
Yeah, it's ultimately, when you break it down, it's about self awareness. It's about the ability to see and understand who you are. Understand, we all have really uncomfortable feelings, like we might feel rage or jealousy or resentment. None of that is bad feelings. It's about understanding in the moment, like, this is what I'm feeling. This is the story I'm telling myself about that. And here's how I'm choosing to react. People who are self aware, emotionally intelligent, and consequently great communicators are very open to taking a pause and starting to like regulate their own emotions versus just reacting.
Hmm.
Anybody who's just reacting without really thinking, or who's just like speaking off the cuff without taking time to process and really gauge a sense of context tend to not be operating with a lot of emotional intelligence. And that is toxic in not only the workplace, but in our families and our relationships, on like extracurricular teams that we're a part of. You really need to be able to know who you are.
Like take that second almost to like pause, breathe,
Mhm.
and then react instead of that constant just like on your
Yes.
mind. You're just like, I'm just gonna say in whatever comes out, and then having to go back and almost like that apology to her, right? You're like, say sorry for how I just reacted. But what is your definition of confidence? So if you were like had somebody, what would be
Mm.
your definition of confidence? Whether it's like personal or actually stand for both, like personal confidence and business confidence.
Mhm. I think for both, I think it's really just owning who you are. It's this ability to almost put up blinders and kind of tune out the judgments, the stories, the expectations of others, and really tune into the opinion of yourself. And when you can tune into what you think and feel about yourself, you're able to have so much more agency over who you are, what you do, what you bring to the table. And that to me is genuine confidence.
What would you, so somebody who's lacking confidence, like a business owner,
Mhm.
what is like, I know
Mhm.
this is such like a hard question, but what is something like you would say or like give them to kind of like a business owner who's just starting out right now and they're listening to this podcast and they're like, my biggest thing is
Mhm.
confidence. They feel that imposter syndrome. They don't really know where they stand in their field of work.
Mhm.
They're like, I'm starting out at the bottom. How do I kind of get there? My confidence is
Mhm.
lacking with pushing myself. What is something that like you would say, or kind of the advice that you would give to them?
I mean, I've written books and courses on this. So there's
Yeah.
like there's a lot we
You're like,
can
I have a
flesh
lot
out
to
that I
say.
think I've got an entire curriculum. But I think one of the most powerful tools is to really to be able to pause and be like, okay, hang on a second. Like whatever thought this is that's coming up, like I'm not confident or I'm not good enough or everybody's gonna find out or somebody else can do this better than, like, we've got a whole roster of stuff that we tell ourselves, right? I think that the big challenge to that is like interrupting that thought and really pausing and being like, hang on a second. What is the story that I'm telling myself? And
Hmm.
is that story true? Followed by, and this is like the Mac Daddy of the question, what am I making this mean about me?
Hmm.
Because we get into this like negative infinity loop style thinking, right? So when we can interrupt it and start to challenge those thoughts and be like, what is that story? Is that story true? And oh my God, what am I making it mean about myself? That starts to bring us out of this like fight, flight, fear, freeze response and back into this place of rational thought so we can kind of keep going in a healthy way.
And was researching you and kind of like deep diving about you. I saw that you had your book. So what kind of push to do that? Like where, like how did you had all of this, these thoughts and this information? Like what was that motivation to kind of be like, I'm going to write this into a book?
Well, first, let's just address that it matches your entire
I
aesthetic.
know, I know.
That like it's like the exact same shade of pink and red that you're
Yes.
literally wearing and surrounded by right now.
I love
I
it.
had always wanted to write a book. I'd always wanted to write a book, and I had the same feeling like, "Who am I to write a book? Like, I could never
Mhm.
do this."
Yeah.
And until I decided I could, until I chose, and I think that's one of the big things about confidence is that it's available to everyone because it is a decision that we make. Like, we show up, we choose to be confident at every moment in our lives or not. And for me, it was like, well, I really want to write a book, but I don't think I can do it. It was like, I had this inner conversation of like, do you really want to do it? Or are you just saying you want to do it?
Mhm.
And he was like, no, no, I really want to do it. I had a really abusive childhood, went through a horrifically traumatic divorce, and then got breast cancer,
Oh my
all while
god.
I was researching a career for myself and single solo parenting 3 little girls under the age of 8. So, like, I had a lot to say. And so once I made that decision of like, no, this dream is gonna come true, I actually, like, wrote most of the book during my chemotherapy sessions for breast
Wow.
cancer because I never had enough time to write a book, and I was like, "Well, I just found a few hours a week to write this." And it was this drive to just get out all of the thoughts. When I don't know if you can relate to this or not, but like
Mhm.
back in the day when I was starting my own self-love, self-discovery, self-acceptance journey, everything I read was like, love yourself, self-care, take care of yourself. And I was like, will somebody please tell me how? And I could never find a step-by-step manual. It was just like, yeah, 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 just love yourself and you'll be good. So I was like, I'm gonna write it. And this is a
Yeah.
self-love manifesto. It is literally step by step. How do you go through the process of actually loving and liking who you are?
That's so like that resonates so much because I feel that. Like I read these books, I'm online and it's like just love yourself, do things that make you happy. And I'm just like, well, sometimes like what makes me happy? I don't know. Like how do I get there? And then that
That's
almost
so
like
common.
throws people back even further than where they were because they're so
Yes.
intimidated by trying to figure out what makes them happy because they're just like, well, I don't know, and now I'm stressed out and now I'm just going to backtrack because I'm just going to fall into this loop again where it's like nobody really tells you
Yeah,
what to do. You're like, how do
I
I do
know.
that?
And so then you have an entire self-help or personal growth industry that is now a machine fueled by gaslighting
Yeah.
their community. By being like,
Mhm.
all you have to do is this. And you're like, how do I do this? Well, you just love yourself or you just do the things that bring you joy. And if you have any kind of traumatic response to that, you will bury yourself in work or you
Mhm.
will bury yourself in unhealthy relationships. You will do what it takes to get this need met instead of being able to confront like what is that feeling of lack. And so I got really annoyed and I decided to write a book about it instead. I was like, you know what, it doesn't exist. I will teach us how to do this.
I seriously love that. Like you even see that in my field of work, like with social media. I'll see all the time on social media and marketing. People will be like, this is how you become viral and this is how you gain this many followers. And I'm just like sitting there, I'm like, no, you don't. But then I,
False.
I have I have people come to me and they're like, well, I saw on Instagram that if you do this, I'll become viral. And I'm just like, yeah, well, if I knew that, I would be viral. Like I don't know what to tell
Yes.
you. And it's like a lot of people, and this goes relate back to just your everyday life, but in business, a lot of people have
Hmm.
these goals that are almost unrealistic. And that's the only things that they're
Hmm.
looking toward, right? Like they're just like, okay, I want
Hmm.
to have 50,000 Instagram followers. And it's like, all right, well, we're at 50. So how are we going to get
Yeah.
there? What's the
And for what
journey?
purpose?
Uh,
And also what do you really want? You know, I like to say that we don't want the thing, we want the feeling that the
mhm.
thing we think the thing is going to give us. Like, great, you'll have 50,000 followers, then what? Like, what do you actually want? Do you want the validation or do you want sales or like what do you want in between there, right?
No, it's that's like a whole other realm in itself. And I focus a lot on like organic social media. So I'm super passionate about like
Yes.
growing your community, right? And like
Yes.
nurturing those people inside your community and not always focusing on the
Hmm.
outside because those people that are within
Hmm.
your will follow you and they're around you for a reason. And it's the same as your everyday
Hmm.
life, right? Like your family and your friends, like they're there and they're supporting, they're their circle. Like let's nurture that instead of
Hmm.
always looking for something on the outside. So I love that.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, and also your book being my colors. I was like, oh my god, I need this. I need to add it into my office.
It's like a good coffee table book for you.
Yeah, seriously. So for a business owner who almost feels like they're just going through the motions. So we talked about kind of those people that are
Mhm.
like lacking that confidence, but almost like they're just going
Mhm.
through the societal norm motion of owning a business,
Mhm.
right? Or like being a business owner. Some like words of advice you can kind of give in that sense of like they're just they're doing the things that they think that they're supposed to, but they're just going through it just because society says this is what you do to become successful.
Yeah. Most of it is smoke and mirrors, and it's designed to sell you courses. Like,
Yeah.
after enough time in this industry, there is no shortcut. There is no magic bullet, and the stats prove that. We know that 20% of businesses close within their first year of
Mhm.
operating, and a full 50% close within 5 years. So, like, do the math on that. You need to you need to listen to what you know to be true. Yes,
Mhm.
you need to fill a gap in the market, and you need to figure out a way of executing that plan. It takes strategy and it takes vision. It takes really solid branding and it takes an incredible network. Like, there are so many
Mhm.
moving pieces that have to be linked together to fuel your success. And success is a long game.
The reason I wanted to start this podcast was because when I started my business 4 years ago, I felt like
Hmm.
alone in the business journey, right? Like I didn't really
Hmm.
know what to do. There were so many ups and downs and like the good, the bad, the ugly, like you're dealing with everything. And
Yeah,
there's like so many avenues of business that like I'm like, oh, social media, but then it's
hmm,
like accounting and money and
I
hiring and
know.
employees. And it's like I
I
did feel
know.
that gap of like you just had nobody to turn to, right? Like you didn't like you couldn't talk
Yeah.
to somebody else. Like I didn't know where to go, and maybe that was just me like
Hmm.
not looking for the resources. But I feel sometimes a lot of people in business experience that, or they feel so
Really common.
alone, yeah, with their
Yeah.
journey. And it's like so many people come from so many walks of earth and deal with so many things in business. So I love like just
Hmm.
connecting and kind of like other people being able to hear and hearing other people's advice and
Yes.
crazy. Like I'm now 4 years into business and it's like 5 years, like why people it's not that I get it.
Yeah.
If you can't see past that 5 year vision of and you're
Yes.
sitting in that, it's a lot to kind of deal and process. So
It is so much work. And,
mhm.
I'm not a hustle glorifier. Like, everything I do, it puts emotional and mental health at the forefront as like the
Mhm.
top priority.
Yeah.
And still, it is just, especially when you're getting started, there is so much to do because you are building a
Mhm.
brand new machine. I have a big like bookshelf in front of me, so I'm just trying
Yeah.
to find the book. One of the books that I read when I was starting out is called Shoe Dog, and it's by Phil Knight, who created Nike.
Yes.
And I remember reading it at a cottage with my family and just crying, like reading the whole thing in tears because he tells the story of Nike, which you and I both know to be bazillion-dollar
Yeah.
success.
Yeah.
But as they were building Nike, they were on the cusp of bankruptcy every single year. Like, they
Mhm.
scaled, they spent the money. They scaled, they spent the money. And I was like, hashtag relatable. Nike was almost a colossal failure for most of its
Mhm.
time starting out. And reading that it was almost so refreshing to know that like nobody gets it right the first time. You have to
Yeah.
pivot, you have to adapt. You're a marketer, you have to beta test things and see
Yeah.
what works, see what doesn't. That's hard. It
Mhm.
takes time, and I feel like there are so many online gurus that wanna tell you, like, "It's easy, follow my formula," and it's like that doesn't happen. It takes sweat equity, and it takes time and unwavering self-belief.
Something that I hear all the time as being a business owner, and I think it's so funny, is people be like, "Oh, you make so much money and it's all yours, and you can travel and do all these things," and I'm just like, "You've clearly never owned a business because it's not even my money, and I can't do whatever I want. So maybe one
Yeah.
day." But I'm like, people just like have this like illusions in their head of like, "Oh my god, being a business owner is so fun," and I'm just like, "Oh my
Mhm.
god, it is. It has its positives, but it also has its cons."
Yes. And I think about that so much, like, there are pros and cons to everything, right?
Mhm.
Being in corporate, that sounds like it'd be pretty hard too, but you also have the gift of a steady paycheck. Like, what would that be
Yeah.
like? And entrepreneurship, yeah, you have a lot more time freedom, but, like, am I getting paid this month? Let's see. Let's see how we go.
Yeah, seriously. It's like the instability, right? Like you don't really know what comes
Yeah.
next, but that's almost like the fun part, which I find is the fun part. I'm just
Yeah.
like it's a challenge. I could be in
Mm,
corporate and be stuck at a salary where I can't up my money or I can't challenge myself or I could do more work, but am I going to get paid for that? I'm just stuck at that salary base. Full transparency, at the beginning of this year, I genuinely was like, oh my God, what is happening to my business? Like, I don't even know
yeah.
if I'm having money come in this month. And then now it's like,
Yes.
so I look back at January and I'm just like, oh my God, I was at such a dark time. And just like, what does the next few months
Yes.
look like for me? And then going into May, June and stuff, it all started to pick back up. And I'm like, okay, this is the
Right
ups
on.
and downs of the roller coaster.
Right on.
So
It is. Yeah. And especially because you started your business during the pandemic, right?
yeah, yeah. So
And it
everybody
is a totally different landscape.
was switching online. So it was like my business
Hmm.
just like went straight up and then it like
Hmm.
I just was on referrals and it was all going good and then it all comes crashing down and it's like I wasn't prepared for that
Yeah.
crash down.
I think that, oh, I don't think, I know that is the experience of most people who are self employed right now.
Yeah. Yeah, they're almost in that like plateau. I feel that with a lot of my
Yeah.
clients in general, right? Like
Yeah. I bet.
yeah,
Yeah.
that huge high and then everybody's just like now like oh my god,
Yeah.
we're 5 years almost since the beginning of COVID, which
Yeah.
is crazy. I don't know where 5
That's
years
wild.
went.
That is wild. Oh my God.
I know.
That didn't even occur
2025.
to me.
I know.
I,
So I just want to switch it a bit. What do you commonly see
mm.
business owners come to you the most for, like in your industry and how you kind of help them? What is the most common struggle that you see?
So, as a marketer, I feel like you will appreciate the nuance of this predicament because that
Okay.
is a pickle. That
Yeah.
has been like my greatest challenge as a business owner.
Mhm.
I can help a lot of people do a lot of different things. And every time somebody comes to work with me, almost every time they're like, I don't know why I need to work with you. I just know I need to work with you. And so that people come to me because they want to work with me. Now,
Yeah.
what do we do? I just got a message from a client this morning who's a food photographer in the US. He had like while we were working together, she had closed $100,000 contract with a new client. She just messaged me to say she got a major brewery on board. That's another $90,000 client. So I've helped people like two, three, 4x their revenue, even after they're in the six-figure march. I help people radically transform their confidence, their relationship to themselves. What I really help is get people out of their own way to get the
Mhm.
result that they want. So the result can be different, but my expertise is really, it starts to shine in like, what is it that you want? How to get that clarity and what you want, confidence in who you are, and the courage to stay true to both of this.
And that's so important. It's like somebody to turn to like you in those times. Like when I look back, like I
Hmm.
was saying 4 years ago, like having somebody like that, I'd be like, oh my God, I can literally just like thing off my chest and then have like that guidance,
Yeah.
right? And like be on that
Yes.
that right path and know that like my struggles are not going to be the end of my business because I think that was a lot that is a
Completely.
lot of people's mindset, right? Like they're down and when
Yeah.
you're down, your your mind is so negative already that you just like stay in that negativity.
Well, and then because of the society that we live in and the environment that we live in, we put a really, really high degree of importance as to what you do, right? Like, what do
Mhm.
you do? It's the first question we ask when we meet somebody. So as a result, whether you're in corporate or you work for yourself, doesn't matter. We start to fuse our identity as to what our work identity is. So if you lose your job or if your business shuts down, we tend to take that as a really personal failure
Mhm.
when in reality they're totally different things. But it becomes very challenging to separate them out unless you're working with somebody who is basically a soundboard who helps you keep perspective and helps you see this like 30,000 foot view of what's actually happening.
Mhm. No, I love that. That's such a good point. We're gonna go back to the two truths
Let's
and
see.
one lie.
I met Brene Brown twice. I drove the entire California coast in a convertible. I had lunch with Steve Carell.
Say the first one, maybe you only met her once.
I met her twice. I did
Uh,
not have lunch with Steve Carell though,
okay,
although that would be
that's a good one. The California coast. I just booked a trip actually in December, and I've done Like Big Sur? Is that what you did? Like the coast of Big Sur?
Ah, so no, I drove from LA to Seattle,
Mm.
and Big Sur was on the list
Yeah.
because why wouldn't it be? Until I realized I was driving, like I had taken a wrong turn and had been driving the wrong direction for an hour and a half.
No.
Oh, I know. It was awful. But and because I was coming home for Mother's Day, I only had like 2 or 3 days. I think I had 3 days to do the drive. So I was like, well, I have to just keep going. And I couldn't
No.
actually go and see Big Sur after all.
Oh. I have an
So
aunt in San Francisco, so I've been all around like that kind of
mm,
area. But I'm going to LA for the first time in December, so I'm excited.
right on. Well, please take photos and send them to me when you go so I can still experience it.
I will for sure. All
Thank you.
right. Well, for the audience, I'm going to give you guys, or you've had the chance, now you know a bit about Leisse. Please, thank you so much for coming on today. You guys should definitely get her book. I will link it in the description so you can get it. I'm definitely going to get a copy.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been nominated. It's actually a finalist for the Canadian Book Club Awards in the business and self-help
Wow.
category. So it's like, it's a legit book. It'll help.
Yes, I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm sure people got so much information. It was so great chatting with you.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.